This is episode 539. I am your host, Keith Andrew. Along here with Don Holbrook. I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Thank you, Andrew.
Now, the honor's all mine. For people who want to know what my talk show is about, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. And to prove to them you can stem out to something. So hashtag break the labels. So that being said, half hour, 32 minutes of your time. Say anything you want, talk about anything you like. It's your time, and you're supporting a good cause, making a new friend out of it. And starting off, what caught my interest is you are one of the best authors today. You're one of the best sellers, and you're also a motivational speaker. So the first question I was going to ask, I can't even speak. First question I was going to ask you is, who influenced you to become a writer, and who influenced you to become a motivational speaker?
Well, I don't know that I had any direct person, Andrew, that influenced me. I'll start, let me go kind of work through it. At first, I became a writer because I was bored and I was on the road a lot, and I thought it was a more practical use of my time to write stories about things I actually wanted to read about. And so I kind of wrote stories about the stuff that I was interested in and researched it so that it would be fun. And it kept me busy when I traveled a lot, and I had seen a lot of different things in the world, so I thought it would be an interesting thing to do. As far as the motivational speaking went, I started speaking because I was representing various projects and products, and I realized that I really liked the public speaking portion of it, so I developed a platform, and then, of course, the books naturally fed into that, so it gave me something to go out and talk to people about, and then I would, have the books as the backup to all that as well. For when I first started, that's how I got started. So, and it worked pretty well. I mean, it took a while to build a platform and build an audience, but I think I did it more just out of curiosity and passion that I wanted to get out and be heard, I guess. Kind of probably the same reason you do your talk show. I mean, I just wanted to make a statement and make myself heard from my own perspective, not for anybody else's.
No, absolutely. And what can you tell our viewers about your book?
Well, the most recent book that I have out, the one that was the #1 bestseller, was called The Next America, surviving and thriving in an unpredictable economy. That was the one that hit #1 on all the genres back in 2015. And I've got a couple books that I'm bringing out right now that are fiction. That was a nonfiction book. It's about, a lot of people have said that The Next America is it was kind of a prelim to the election of 2016. Meaning that I didn't know Trump was going to run for office, but basically what I called for in the book looks really similar to what happened with the election of 2016. But it wasn't designed that way. It was just what I saw going on in the economy. It wasn't in support of any political candidate, that's for sure. And then I decided after that last nonfiction, after I kind of hit #1 with the nonfiction stuff, I kind of decided that I'd climbed that mountain, conquered that mountain. I didn't need to do it again. Because I'd written 12 nonfiction books at that point, and about 3 of them had been bestsellers. So I decided to start writing stuff that I was interested in, the fiction stuff, and that's where I've focused really for the last 3 or 4 years. So I have a really cool fiction book that's probably going to come out next spring called The Ninth Templar, which I've been doing research on for almost a decade. So it's a pretty cool story about what the Knights Templar found under the Temple of Solomon back during the First Crusade, and how it eventually got them, betrayed and murdered, and nobody ever found out what the secret was. So it's kind of one of the oldest unsolved mysteries of history.
That's pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. Have you ever thought about doing audiobooks?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever thought about doing audiobooks?
Yeah, I have quite a few audiobooks. Almost everything that I bring out, I put out in all the formats: ebook, print, both hardcover and softcover, and then I usually do an audiobook as the very last follow-up to every book.
Yeah, very cool. You should send me some and I can promote it on the show if you like.
Yeah, I mean it's the one I have out. The most recent book I have out, is The Next America, that's on audio. I can't remember the guy who read it for me, but you caught me off guard on that one. But it is an audiobook format. I do have it out in audiobook format.
Now, when you mentioned the next America, did you write that when President Obama was in office, or coincidental? Was it because Trump? You heard Trump was running.
No, I wrote the original first edition of The Next America in 2011. So Obama was in office at that time. And then I basically said in the book, the second edition is the one that hit number one. I redid the book in 2014 and re-released it, and that's the one that hit number one. But it was basically just the erosion of what I saw happen to American politics and the American economy and kind of the fabric of our country. And it didn't really matter to me who was sitting in office or who was going to be in office. It was really the mood of the people and why we were going down, kind of the stark path, is the way I put it, and how we could solve some of the problems that we were becoming too tolerant of, I guess, is the issue.
No, absolutely. Now, the next question I was going to ask you is who influenced you to become a motivational speaker, and how many years have you been a motivational speaker?
I kind of did the motivational speaking on my own because I wanted to get out and promote the books and promote the things I felt strongly about. I don't necessarily, I guess if I had to name somebody who I really admire as a motivational speaker, it'd probably be Tony Robbins. But the original concept of how I do it all, I learned many years ago from Dale Carnegie's courses. But it's really just an expression of the things that I believe in and that most people want to know about, is how to be happy and how to be successful, and that it's more than just about money, but money is an important thing that you have to learn how to manage, or it creates a lot of stress in your life. So that's kind of the platform that I had. I also had a platform that I spoke a lot at Chambers of Commerce about. Was basically, the theme was called leading in times of chaos, because the economy has been in such turmoil over the last 10 years. And that was a very popular subject because people always want to know what's going to happen next. Where's the next shoe going to drop?
Yeah, I didn't mean to laugh, but at the time I hear Tony Roberts, I think, you ever see Family Guy where Peter asks him for his autograph, and next thing you know, he's eating Peter? He's like, Tony Roberts hungry.
No, I've not seen that one.
So every time I hear his name, I just think of that.
It sounds pretty funny. Sounds like something that my son would probably watch.
Oh, we didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I guess you were covering the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said my son would probably enjoy that too, because that sounds like something that he would watch. But no, I wasn't aware of the Family Guy when it did that.
Now, the next question I was going to ask you is social media. With everything you accomplish, do you think social media can make you or break you?
Can do both. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a wide open pioneer that has very few rules, and unfortunately, a lot of people that have bad intentions use social media for bad purposes and are malicious and malevolent about it. So you have to be really careful on social media, because there's a lot of people believe they can hide on social media. So I always advise people to be very careful about cyber bullies and cyber stalkers, because they really do exist, and there's quite a bit of that goes on. Like 70 million people a year get stalked on social media and have bad scenarios and run-ins because of it. But on the other side of the fence, social media can also drive very positive things. Especially, I mean, I have no choice. If you're an author, you have to have a social media presence, because your fans deserve and need to be able to have some exposure to you and know what's going on. But you still have to be really careful because there's some crazy people out there. It's the only way to say it. I mean, I ran into some nut jobs on social media that think they can hide behind it and be malicious towards people and say and do things that aren't true. And it's harmful because it stays out there forever, and people think that if it's in print that it's actually real, but it's just somebody's opinion. You know what I mean? And so it's not real news. And the people sometimes purport themselves as investigative journalists when they're just armchair malicious people that want to pick on people, and they get their giggles from doing that.
No, I agree with you. There's actually a limo driver occasionally I talk to, and he's like, there's people, because he's a limo driver for a couple of celebrities and a couple of wrestlers, and they're like, yeah, there's people wait in the airports, and there's people wait out their hotels. Like, Jesus Christ, don't these people have normal lives to live? It's like, why do you want to hang out at someone's hotel or wait even at an airport at like 5 a.m? It's kind of like what is your?
You would think so. I mean, you would think so, but there's a lot of people that I picked up a stalker back in 2012 online, and I never met the person. I didn't know anything about her, but she made up a whole bunch of stuff about me that just wasn't true. But you really don't want to get into a contest of trying to one-up somebody on social media that no matter what answer you give them, Andrew, they're going to disagree with you. You could prove them wrong all day long, and they would still say, oh, well, that fact is not a fact. You're like, that's crazy. It's a fact. I mean, it's a fact from a legitimate source. I mean, but you just can't win those kind of battles, and unfortunately there's a lot of people like that out there. So you have to be really careful. But what I ended up doing when I picked up a really malicious social media stalker is I wrote a book about it, and I put the book out. It's called Soapbox Momster. It's a fictional book, but it talks about the real problem of cyber stalking and how they harm people and they hurt people. And unfortunately, some people take it so serious that they actually hurt themselves. They get so upset about it that they ended up. I know a couple cases where they actually committed suicide because they were so distraught over what the stalker was putting on the internet about them. And that's what moved me to write the book, because I thought, man, if you can just stop, if you can just make an awareness of this online bullying and online stuff that's going on, it's got to help something to get the word out. So I wrote the book, and of course, the stalker didn't like that. So she actually identified herself to all my fans and who she really was, and that the book was she said the book was all about her when it was really clear that it was a fictional book. But right. She identified with it so much, and she couldn't help herself but to start to stalk all my fans that were writing reviews of the book, and it just fueled, number one, it sold more books because everybody started buying the book. But number two, it actually brought her out into the light of day where people saw she was a real malicious, real person. And they understood now the motivation behind why I wrote the book. And one of my high school friends actually said, he said, you did that on purpose. You actually drew them out. He said, you knew that she wouldn't be able to resist. I said, well, of course. That was the intent of writing the book, was to entice her to step out into the light of day where people could see, the bad person that she is and what she's doing to all these different people. And, I took the wrath of it, obviously, but it didn't, it's the reason I wrote that book. That is a fictional book, and that's out. That's available right now. It's called The Soapbox Momster, but it was inspired by a real stalker, and so social media can be a real dangerous place if you're not careful. You still have to use the same rules as you would in the real world. The physical world is that pick your friends carefully and make sure you vet them, and make sure you don't give anything in confidence online that you don't want everybody in the world to read about.
Vanessa Lina. Asian Lalo. Allie Heigl. This is Cynthia Bass today. I'm Sonia Fisher. This is Shane Smith. My name is Alexandra Bowie. My name is Amelia Clover. Hi, I'm Amy Linden.
Hi, I'm Anita Nicole Brown.
Meg Green.
Hi, my name is Asata Caldwell. Hi, everybody. I'm Brooke.
Hi, I'm Bryn Berg.
Hi, I'm Casey Dunn.
Hi, it's Cassandra Kavinsky.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Christina Briza.
I'm Cindy Hogan. I'm Courtney Sinello.
Hi, I'm Daisy.
My name is Deborah Jane East.
Hi, my name is Dinah Marcia.
Hi, everyone, I'm Victoria London.
Hi, I'm Heather Crona. Hi, I'm Heather Callahan Stevens.
Hi, I'm J. Nicole Ralph.
My name is Jamie Petrell. My name is Terry. My name is Julia Brankovich.
Kathleen Wills.
Kimberly Amato.
Hi, my name is Laura Putnam.
Hi, I'm Laura Chapanis.
Hi, everyone, I'm Melissa Damas.
This is Michelle Mupo, a.k.a. Fuchsia. I'm Rachel Olivera.
Hi, my name is Sarah Joy Mount.
Hi, I'm Susan Brender.
Hi, everyone, this is Venus Leone.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Dana.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Herrera, and I was just on the Keith Andrew Network. It was tons of fun. We used up all our time and then some. I really recommend this show, and try to be a guest on Keith's show. It was super fun.
Was trying to call in. She doesn't realize I'm on the phone. Yeah, you still have to be really careful about what you say and do. And I've always, since I've been a public figure a long time, I've always said to my kids that, you know, there's nothing that I've done that I'm ashamed of and that I couldn't tell in public. It doesn't mean I would make the same choice again, because I've learned a lot from wisdom and experience, but I didn't ever do anything that I was actually ashamed of. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've made mistakes, and I think that people have to own up to those, but nothing that I would want to hide. And I think that you have to live your life that way, because you have to assume that whatever you do is going to be broadcast or publicized somewhere nowadays with all the cameras and all the social media. So you might as well, live a very upstanding life if it's at all possible. I mean, people make mistakes, but you still need to be aware of the fact that basically we live in a fishbowl now. Everybody's pretty much a public figure now, right?
Sometimes, it's funny. I went to the Ulster County Fairs, my dad, and I was wearing my shirt. It's the logo. It's like, it would have been nice if someone came up to me and say, "Hey, I'm a fan of your show. I like your message." But at the same time, it's kind of like what you said. But it's funny you should say it, because my dad said it too. You're going to regret having people walk up to you, because eventually you're going to want your privacy.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I think authors have a little bit of that, but I always say we have the best of both worlds. There are people who know what we look like, but not very many of our fans really look at the picture to see what we look like. So we have a lot of anonymity walking around. I've had very few people actually recognize me in public. I've had a few, but very few. And I like the anonymity. I don't think I'd want to be a celebrity where everybody knows who you are and all that kind of stuff. I think I agree with your dad that it's probably more of a curse than it is a blessing.
No, absolutely. Now, the next question I was going to ask you about social media, now I'm going to ask you about media, is what makes you good enough to grab someone's attention? For an example, I'm trying to get media exposure. I'm trying to get people to write about me and interview me, but I keep getting turned down left and right, saying, "Oh, I'm not a good fit. I'm not that interested." As you're a motivational speaker and book author, what is your words of wisdom for people out there to say, what makes you stand out?
I don't know. I don't know what really made me stand out, other than I tried to make my platform of what I wanted to talk about be something that was really timely and of interest to the public. The media is a tough nut to crack. I mean, they're very finicky about what they want and when they want it and who they want to talk to. What I've found is that the stuff that I do a lot of motivational speaking about, there's a lot of interest in doing things like that for groups, because they need to put butts in seats and have somebody talk about something that their audience wants to hear, because it's usually related to some kind of a group, nonprofit or something. That's mostly who I spoke to. The stuff that gets the most attention, really, for me nowadays, is this whole Knights Templar mystery is like huge since Dan Brown. I mean, everybody wants to know, what is it they found? What did they discover? And so I think having a really controversial secret mystery just drives people nuts. And I get calls and emails and people that come to visit me in Vegas and want to, debate about what it was under the temple that they found. And there's people from all walks of life that are interested kind of in what I call the conspiracy theory stuff. And I think and there's never been a show made about the Templars that didn't do really well in the media. So they tend to want to, they want to have a new message about that. So I found that to be a very popular subject. When I started to write the book, I don't necessarily think it was as popular. I think I kind of hit the curve just at the right time with Dan Brown and everything. And that seems to get a lot of media attention because people seem to want to believe. I always say that everybody wants to believe. They want to believe in what is the most likely answer for what caused the Knights Templar to all get murdered and go into secret hiding and have all these things. But if you look at what makes sense and is logical, everybody thinks it's crazy when I tell them the theory, because they're like, well, that, why do you think that? I said, well, nobody else has been able to prove anything otherwise. So all the scientific knowledge that we have and all of the historic facts we have, we still can't solve the mystery. So obviously there's something that we're not talking about that is part of the mystery that nobody wants to actually, claim. And so that mystique and that intrigue drives, the curiosity drives the public nuts, I think, and that's what makes great fans, is they want to read about it. And if I look at my fan base on the Templar stuff, it's humongous, and they all think that I know something that they don't know. It's still a made-up theory, Andrew. I mean, I did 10 years of research, and I have a pretty good theory, and a lot of people believe it's really probably the closest thing to what really happened. But I did an interview with a longtime friend of mine who's a CNN commentator, and he said, well, how do you know you're right? I said, I don't. It's still just a theory. It's just a really intriguing one that everybody seems to think it's really cool. But the other fact is people just want to believe. They want to believe in magic. They want to believe in the supernatural. They want to believe in things that are not explainable by human logic or by scientific reasoning or rules of nature or hard evidence. So then you get down to the fourth leg of the mystery, which is stuff that's not explainable, which could lead you to believe the supernatural or whatever you want to call it, magic. I just call it unexplained science. But the bottom line is that that's what gets the media's attention. That super, curiosity stuff. They want to sell viewership. You know what I mean? The more controversial, the more intriguing and interesting, the more the media finds it.
That's true, and you bring up two good points. First one is, I was just looking, if I happen to look down, that's because I'm not bored. I'm just looking on my phone. And the first thing I saw that caught my interest, let's see, you are a best-selling on Amazon.com. You're one of the best-selling authors, and I just want to say congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
And the other one that caught my interest were you were interviewed, or were you on or were you interviewed by Fox News, US Today, ABC Radio, NPR, PBS, and some super symbol with the horse. I have no idea what that horse is.
Horse. I don't know. It might be Australian public broadcasting. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews all over the world in our country. I mean, I've done hundreds of radio shows. I just can't put them all up there. And I've done lots of newspaper interviews and a lot of magazine interviews. Those are the big television ones. I've done Fox News on the air live, NBC, ABC, and then I've been in most of the major newspapers for something one time or another. But it's been over a span of a career, you know what I mean? So it's been a long time. I don't go seeking out the media, to be honest with you, anymore. I used to in the old days. But now, because of this Templar stuff, to be really candid, Andrew, people, they want to know, they want me to publish this book as soon as possible, obviously. But even when, I've showed this to my oldest son. My oldest son's 24. And I told him, I said, people just want to believe. They want to believe in stuff that we can't prove. And so I've done a lot of media around that. And I've done a lot of interviews on television and radio and print. And I find that it's just people want to believe in something that's unusual. And the the Knights Templar thing has been a huge boon. I did something about Bigfoot back in 1994 that made of Fox. It was actually a show called Sightings. We did a half an hour segment on Bigfoot, but I actually did that back in 1994, and that was just based on a Bigfoot sighting in the Midwest, which was an unusual place to see Bigfoot, and that made a national, primetime evening show. So it's just been right place, right time, I guess, for me. And I've always usually been on very controversial subjects that the public wants to know about, like Bigfoot or the Templars. I mean, both of them are pretty big subjects.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people say if you want to look for Bigfoot, for some reason, go to Canada. There's a part in, I think, Winnipeg, because it's so damn cold up there. People imagine seeing things. So Canada's a big thing. But you mentioned in the Midwest, so if you kind of think about it, there could be a ghost, a Bigfoot, because ghosts can travel faster than the speed of light, or there could be multiple ones, or multiple ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people that want to believe in like the Bigfoot theory and everything. I mean, in the long run, actually the most funniest one I ever had was when the History Channel. There were some people who worked for the History Channel that wanted to do a show about the Templars, and they had thought they found a cave in Vermont that was up in the mountains. That was about 300 or 400 feet off the Lake Champlain kind of plateau there, straight up a sheer cliff, and they thought that was where the Templars had hid this secret that they found under the temple. And they called me and said, "What do you think? We're getting ready to go do a GoPro climb up this thing, and we're going to film this whole thing." And they kind of put me on the spot, and so they turned it on live for a second to do this little quick interview with me. And I said, "So let me get this straight. Do you think that the Templars hid something up on this mountain, a sheer cliff, 400 feet of sheer straight up rock? And this was been 400 or 500 or 600 years ago. And this sarcophagus or whatever you think is up there weighs several hundred pounds. And they got it in this little cave, and they said, "What do you think?" I said, "What happens if you get up there and it's empty? Or you have a Geraldo Rivera moment." And they were like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I don't think there's much likelihood that you're going to find anything up there." And I said, for example, how did they get up there? Did the Midwestern field running Sasquatch carry it up on its shoulder and climb that cliff and put that in there? I said, because I don't see men getting it up there 600 years ago. Not what they were talking about. They were talking about like they were going to find like the lost tomb of Christ and Mary and all these things. And I was like, you're talking about hundreds of pounds of rock sarcophagus. I mean, it would take a humongous amount of equipment, or the Sasquatch, great Sasquatch, could carry it up. And that was, the guy goes, and they thought I was being serious, Andrew, for a second. And then finally, the guy that was with me, that was my producer, he started laughing. He goes, "He's busting your chops, guys. He doesn't believe that Bigfoot carried it up there. He's telling you that there's no way there's anything up there." Years later, they went up and they did the exploration. Of course, the cave was empty, Andrew. So they called me and said, "You were right. There's nothing up here." I said, "I could have told you that. The Templars never came to that part of America." So it was an interesting thing. They crossed Bigfoot with the Templars. So for me, that was an interesting moment.
But what is your theory? I think I think everything existed at one time or another. The Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, of course aliens are real. But do you think, I'll give you an example. Are you a Dragon Ball Z fan?
No, my son used to be.
There's a video of a guy or woman looking out the airplane, and they see a golden cloud, unless they're smoking something on the airplane, I don't know what. They saw a golden cloud go past the airplane, and it's like, "Oh, look, it's Goku. See, it's the Nemesis, and he's wearing the orange outfit." Do you think that's aliens messing with us because that's what we want to believe? Or do you think it's ultimate alternative realities, like the Bermuda Triangle?
Let me turn it around for you. Let me tell you how I handle that question in regards to like my writing. So what I would turn around and ask you would be this. First off, most people have what I call specific feelings about what I call the universal questions of life. Is there a God? That's the first thing you have to answer for yourself. Everybody has their own viewpoint of whether there's a God, an ultimate creator, a great architect, whatever you want to call it. So that's the first question that people really want to know about. So they want to believe, is there a God? And then the second one they want to know is, is there an afterlife? Is there something after this? Is there a soul, an eternal spark that never goes away and that gives us some hope of a new reality somewhere else someday? And so people want to know kind of what's next. Is there a what's next? That's a universal question that all mankind has an opinion on usually. So everybody kind of has their own opinion, whether they're right or wrong. And by the way, all these things we can't prove. They're all questions of faith, right? We can't prove there's a God one way or the other. Everybody has their own opinion. And then you get to your next one. Your favorite topic is, are we alone in the universe? And if so, are we the ultimate sentient life in the universe? If you think that man is the most advanced intellectual creature in this entire universe, people have their own views on that. And then the last one is, of course, did we evolve or were we created? And was there any possibility that this was, a hybrid? Just because, let me give you an example. You can believe in God and still believe that there's aliens, because it doesn't mean that God only created us, right? So it doesn't create a polarization of people. Secondly, you can believe that we have a soul and that we're sentient. That doesn't mean that we are both. That we're the only sentient creatures in the universe. And so it all relates to how people view it. I kind of think that there's evidence that aliens could have intervened with our own evolution. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And I think the Templars found some stuff out that maybe questioned what we all want to believe are the facts of how we began and the whole story of religion in general. So I think that's what made them a target of being killed by and betrayed by the church and the monarchies.
It's true. But you look at the pyramids, you kind of figure those things weren't built by people. And for an example, a pharaoh lives 50, 60 years, and the croaks, but they're still building his pyramid. Then another pharaoh, whatever Egyptian god comes along, he croaks, like, okay, I want a pyramid too. So you have a pyramid for your first god, and now you have your second, and you're on a schedule saying you're supposed to build these things of stone. It's kind of like you're not working a 9 to 5 or punching a time clock or something. It's like what I really think it's God made the pyramids, doodled on them, says, and then kind of got bored with it, or said, let them figure it out. Aliens, yeah, why the hell not? Whatever floats your boat. I just think it's a big joke, but I don't think human beings really built those.
Well, you have to think about this, Andrew. If aliens are smart enough to get to this planet, but we're not smart enough to get to theirs, that would mean they would probably be smart enough to cloak our ability to see and detect them, because we aren't advanced enough to go anywhere else. And if they're able to get all the way here, they're probably a little ahead of us. So I don't necessarily, I don't make a big issue about whether there's aliens or not, but I don't believe we're alone in the universe. But, I look at it this way. When I talk to people about the Templar stuff, which seems to really intrigue them, I talk about those 4 or 5 major universal questions that you and I just talked about, and then I tell them how I came up with the book. And I said, what if the Templars discovered something that those questions would no longer be faith-based, but could be actually proven? What if they had what if somebody actually had the definitive answer to all those questions you and I just talked about? Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, knew the answer to them. That'd be pretty powerful information, right?
True, and all the religious fanatics would be nuts. Well, not sure.
It may not make you it may not make you really super powerful with the Catholic Church, and maybe not even with the monarchies, because, our understanding of the answer to those 4 questions might not be what you'd expect. So that would be a good reason to cover it up by killing the source. So if you don't want somebody to erode your power, you get rid of the knowledge, right?
Well, it's ironic they should mention that. That's kind of what they do in Russia. Or in other countries where someone knows something where they don't want to leak out into the public, they have them killed.
Right. Well, and that's what happened back when the Templars, got all arrested on Friday the 13th. But I always tell people that, you have to remember that whatever the Templars discovered, it was a threat to the church and it was a threat to the crown. So it can't be some of the stuff that people put out there as the main themes for the Templars. Like people say, well, they discovered the Holy Grail. I'm like, yeah, but the church doesn't have to kill them all over the Holy Grail. They could just say, okay, it's a Christian relic and it's really special, or even if they discovered, something that would be, like the Holy Grail, or they discovered, the bones of Christ, or whatever they want to say. They found a proof of Jesus being married to Mary Magdalene. I mean, there's all, that Jesus had a child. I mean, there's all these kinds of things that would be interesting, but it doesn't necessarily rise to the occasion of causing you to have to kill all these people all as one big orchestrated move, a serious conspiracy theory. So whatever it is had to be something that threatened both the church and the crown. And I don't think it was any just one thing. I think it's a combination of knowledge. So like if you found a lost gospel that actually told the truth about the things you and I just talked about, that might be pretty threatening if it actually was contrary to what the Bible says, or at least major parts of the Bible when it comes to Jesus. So that wouldn't be a popular thing to have out there, but it still might not be enough motivation to kill a bunch of guys and try and grab the secret, which they did try to do, but they failed at. It could come down to other things, that they discovered, and I think it would be interesting. Like, you have to remember that it has to be something that both the church and the monarchs would both fear, and they both fed off each other. So the church endorsed the kings and queens and gave them the right to rule, and the church ruled the people with God's word. So, the thing I always ask people is think about what's more. The Bible, by all definition, is the inspired word of God, written by man, inspired by God. That's kind of how it's said. So what could trump the Bible based on those terms?
That's true. I agree.
I mean, think about what would actually trump the Bible if you use the church's definition of the Bible, which is written by man, inspired by God. And so I always say, well, what about written by God, given by God? No man's interpretation at all. What if it was direct from God? That trumps written by man, interpreted, inspired by God. What about just written by God? What if you found something that was actually written by God? That'd be pretty powerful. That's just an example. I'm not saying that that's what they absolutely found. What I'm saying is you have to think about examples of things that would be so controversial that it would cause major institutions to want to kill a bunch of people. And they absolutely admitted that they did it. So, all these years later, they admitted to the conspiracy.
Hey, the truth is out there, right?
Well, that's what they say. And of course, the Templars' slogan is, Veritas Vos Liberata, which is the truth will set you free. So if you know the truth, I mean, it's interesting. But a lot of my fans think that I actually know what they actually found under the temple, and I don't. I just have a lot of research that points to what I think it is, and it's enough of a theory that a lot of people find it, really interesting, and that's what people want to read about it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, wrapping up, I do have a couple questions for you off the air. But when I first approached you, are you still there or did a phrase? Oh, there we go. I have a couple questions for you off the air.
It broke up for a second.
When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, What was your first reaction and what made you say yes? And also, how can people follow you on social media?
They can follow me on Don Holbrook, the author, and also on the Ninth Templar social media that's out there. On the name of my next book coming out is called The Ninth Templar. There's a whole bunch of stuff on social media about that. When it comes to you had a good message, and I thought that it was a worthwhile thing to get the message out that you're promoting, and why you do it, what drives you to do it was intriguing to me, and I thought this is the kind of stuff I want to support.
No, absolutely. Stay tuned. I have a couple questions for you off the air. But wrapping up, it was an honor and privilege to have you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.
All right, me too. Thank you very much.